$600 billion a year. That is what AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile take between them. And $140 of it came out of your bank account last month, on the same day it always does. 9 days ago, the president of SpaceX named all three out loud in front of Wall Street and said she expects to take their customers. She gave a date. But here is what should stop you. When this was still only a rumor in a news story, those three companies lost 4% of their value in one afternoon. 4% on a rumor about a phone that does not exist. This is the Tesla vault. Let me tell you exactly what was said, because this was not a leak and it was not a guess. On the 4th of August, on SpaceX's first earnings call since going public, President Gwynne Shotwell told analysts the next generation of Starlink satellites starts flying next year, and an upgraded phone service switches on by the end of that year. Then she was asked about the competition, and instead of being polite about it, she named them: AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. Her words: "I anticipate us to be able to acquire quite a few of their customers, because I think our service will be better." Read that again. Not "we hope to compete." Not "there is room for everybody." "I anticipate taking their customers." She put numbers behind it too. Today, SpaceX borrows a sliver of airwaves from a partner. On the new system, it will be running 13 times more of its own, with roughly 10 times the satellites overhead. Her description of the result was 100 times better than what exists today. 16 months. That is the window she gave them. So why did three of the biggest companies in America flinch at a rumor? Because they are far more fragile than they look, and they know it. Here is how a phone company actually works. Before it sells you anything, it has to buy the invisible airwaves your call travels through. Then build steel towers, everywhere, wire them together, power them, and keep repairing them for as long as they stand. Over the last 10 years, those three companies spent $110 billion on the airwaves alone. Not the towers, not the wire, just the permission. That money is already gone, and there is exactly one place it comes back from: you. $140 at a time, every month, for as long as you own a phone. Now sit with what that means. They cannot cut your bill very much, even if they wanted to. The debt is the reason the bill exists. So get this: somebody who never borrowed that money and does not owe it back can charge whatever he likes. Which brings us to what Elon Musk already owns. Last year, SpaceX paid roughly $20 billion for airwaves of its own, bought outright from a company called EchoStar. Not rented, not borrowed, owned. He owns the rockets that carry the satellites, so putting them up costs him what it costs, and nothing on top. And more than 650 of those satellites are in orbit tonight, connecting to ordinary phones in 22 countries. Not a test, not a prototype. Measured by ground covered, it is already the largest network of its kind on this planet. Your neighbor may be using it right now and have no idea what it is. And instead of a forest of new steel towers, the plan on the ground is small transmitters bolted to Starlink dishes that are already sitting on people's roofs. So line the two of them up. One side owes $110 billion and has to earn every cent of it back out of your pocket. The other side paid cash, owns the rocket, and is renting roof space. That is not a fair fight. That is a man who showed up without the debt. Which leaves one thing missing from the picture: the phone itself. And in the weeks before the company went public, a small group of investors sat in a room and were shown one. According to the Wall Street Journal, it was a handset. Slim, sharp cut edges, thinner than the phone beside you right now. Turn it on, and there is no Apple logo and no Google. It runs an operating system built inside SpaceX that exists nowhere else on Earth. And underneath all of it, not as an app you open, but as the floor of the thing, sits Grok, Musk's own artificial intelligence. Now, that device is rumored. That is the honest word for it. We will use it once and move on. Musk says flatly that he is not building a phone. But watch what the man says when nobody is accusing him of anything. In January, somebody asked him about a Starlink phone. He answered, not out of the question at some point. It would be a very different device than current phones. That is not a denial. That is a spec sheet. I know what you are thinking. He denied it. More than once. So let me give you the strangest thing this man has ever said on the subject. Last October, asked about building a phone, Elon Musk said the idea of making a phone makes me want to die. And then he finished the sentence. But if we have to make a phone, we will. That is not a man who is not building a phone. That is a man waiting for a reason. So what would it cost you? This is where the carriers should be frightened, because the answer has nothing to do with generosity. It is arithmetic Apple is not allowed to do. Right now, the top iPhone costs about $485 in parts. It sells for $1,199. Apple clears roughly $700 on every single one that leaves a store. That is not greed. That is the business. Apple answers to shareholders, and those $700 are what they were promised. Apple cannot walk away from that money. Musk can. He has never made his money on hardware. A Starlink dish sells close to what it cost to build, because the dish was never the business. The service is the business. So ask yourself where the phone lands. $1,200? $800? $500? On a fixed income, that spread is not a preference. That is the difference between yes and never. Now the bill. And I want to be straight with you here because there will be a bill. Nobody is handing you a satellite network for free, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. But look at the real numbers we already have. The average American phone bill runs about $141 a month. A family of 4 pays closer to $170. And the satellite service that exists today, right now on T-Mobile, costs $10 a month. You do not even have to be a T-Mobile customer to get it. So the answer lives somewhere between $10 and $140. And every single reason it lands near the bottom is a cost this man does not carry. What sounds like the better deal to you? There is one more thing the carriers have no answer for. Coverage. Those satellites already reach more than 500,000 square miles of this country no ground network has ever touched. Nobody was ever going to build a tower out there. There was never any money in it. Which means there is no safe corner left on the map. Nowhere Verizon can point to and say, out here, we are the only choice you have. When the network is overhead, everywhere is a competitive market. If you want to know what Musk is actually building before it turns up on a shelf, subscribing is the cheapest way to find out. We do this every week. Now let me give you the other side, because the people who doubt all of this are not fools. Craig Moffett is one of the most respected telecom analysts in America. He says it is extraordinarily challenging to imagine a Starlink service that competes with the carriers inside the next 5 years. The chief executive of T-Mobile went further. He called the threat exaggerated, and he asked a fair question. What problem does a satellite company actually solve for a man who lives in a city and already has 5 bars? And they have a point. The airwaves Musk bought are real, but small next to what the big 3 are sitting on. Your phone, physically, is a poor radio for talking to space. And when Shotwell was asked what building the ground network would cost, she gave no number. She said the company has a lot of really great and new ideas. That is not an answer. That is a company that has not finished its own math. So here is the honest position. Nobody should be telling you a Starlink phone lands on a shelf next Christmas. It will not. But every expensive piece of this is already bought and paid for. The airwaves are owned. The rockets are flying. 650 satellites are over your head tonight, carrying real calls for real people. The chip makers have already been asked to add the frequency. And the president of the company stood in front of Wall Street 9 days ago and named a date. The technology is not the question anymore. The technology is real. The only piece still missing is the cheapest one. So imagine this. It is a few years from now. You are 65. And the bill that used to land on the kitchen table every month, the one you never once questioned, is a fraction of what it was. Not gone. Smaller. Small enough that you stopped thinking about it. You drive out to see your daughter, 4 hours on a road that used to swallow your signal for 40 minutes at a stretch. Your phone never drops. Not because somebody finally built a tower out there. Nobody was ever going to build a tower out there. But because the tower is over your head now, and it is moving. And the money that used to vanish every month into a company you never chose, never met, and could never argue with, sits in your account instead. That is not a fantasy about a rocket to Mars. That is a phone bill. So here's what I want from you in the comments. If Musk put this phone in front of you tomorrow, at half what your last one cost, and cut your bill by 2/3, would you leave the carrier you have been with for 20 years? Or does it have to be free? Because there is a piece of this I have not told you about yet. 2 years ago, a hurricane knocked out 74% of the cell towers in North Carolina, and the thing that put those people back in touch with their families was already in orbit. That is the next one. This is the Tesla Vault. If you want to stay on top of what Tesla and SpaceX are building next, like this video and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.